All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, very excited to talk to an individual who is very prominently featured with Lights Out Extreme Fighting, a figurehead individual with that outlet, and great to see them returning on May 10th, getting back to Thunder Studios in Long Beach. Lights Out XF24 is going down, and very happy to be joined with Lights Out Extreme Fighting figurehead and NFL legend Shawne Merriman. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, no, doing good, man. Just looks like a great card, and it seems like Thunder Studios has been such a great space for the promotion across the last, few events and everything like that. So great to see, the crowd back at Long Beach and, taking over California and everything again.
Yeah, man. I think I try to step out of the promoter realm of like just promoting a fight and just talk about the level of competition and the level of fighters that we've gotten as of lately, and just because we're just getting out there, we're so distributed in so many different platforms and our viewership and eyeballs, man, we're getting, some of the top talent that's reaching out now that's getting on these cards. I mean, sometimes we even struggle on trying to get enough people there. We got what, like I think 14 fights or close to 14 fights lined up on this one, which is a lot of fights in one night. And we still struggle to because we're looking at, okay, what do we got June 14th in the San Diego card? But just having like our main event, with Tyrell and Carl, just every time we have a fight now at this point, it's another step. And Jake Babion, who's returning on this one, and Brandon Art, um, we're just the level of fighters that's reaching out now. It really is exciting for me because that's the whole goal. We want to feed as many of the top guys to the UFC or get them prepared, right? Create our own guys, build them up, making sure people see him because we also have a big platform, not just with myself, but also across, all the digital forefronts and social media, getting an opportunity to talk about these guys on here, right? Because they'll see it, they love it because they know that I can't wait for some of these fights personally. But every fight that we've had, every call we've had at this fight at this time has gone bigger and better.
Yeah, and I feel like you're positioned interestingly in the landscape too, because you're kind of talking about certain like media rights considerations and stuff like that. Like I feel like we're seeing a lot of leagues like, for instance, WWE on Netflix, like, it seems like UFC is potentially navigating like a similar sort of situation there. Like I would think that it would really, I guess, open things up for, I guess, like the network branch of the Lights Out brand and everything like that. I imagine that would be quite exciting for you.
Big time, big time. Look, everything right now is live and exclusively on Lights Out Sports TV. And we've gotten a lot of like Karate Combat now. We got some of their live fights and undercards and this and LFA. We got a ton of stuff. For me, especially seeing what's going on in the landscape, for us to move the live content for Lights Out Extreme Fighting off of Lights Out Sports, it's going to have to be a bigger and long-term partnership with somebody. We had great partners. We work with Fubo. They were really, really good to work with. But next time we end up moving off of Lights Out Sports TV, it'll be a bigger and a long-term contract with somebody and a bigger partnership, man. Like we understand that look, the streaming landscape right now is aggressive and it's a lot of competition. But what we've done is start creating some of this original programming and content that's nowhere else to drive these eyeballs, right? Every time we have a fight for Lights Out Extreme Fight, we see the viewership number go up and it spikes. And when it even comes back down, it's still higher than it was last event. So we understand these live fights that we have. Like I said, Karate Combat, I think they got a fight coming up. We have their undercards and a lot of these other bigger, undercards with Swerve TV because we carry Swerve TV and Fight TV. So we got a lot of combat sports there, man. So we love it. We love our place. But then again, when you look at Netflix and look at some of these bigger and long-term partnerships happening, do have you kind of looking at, some options.
Yeah, no, and it's good to have options, no doubt. But I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't, touch back on that, massive fight that you outlined there with Carl Sumena taking on Tyrell Fortune. I mean, what a, exemplary heavyweight showdown there and everything like that. And really just, speaks to kind of what you were talking about too, with a lot of like bigger name talent out there on the landscape wanting to, fight under the Lights Out banner, just considering where both of those guys have fought previously and all.
Yeah, big time. I mean, to happen, yeah, I can't wait to see Tyrell. I haven't got a chance to see him up close and personal, and especially with Lights Out Extreme Fighting. I watched him, fight in other promotions in the past. And then again, you talk about Carl, man. Like Carl has heavy hands, very heavy hands. So this is not a cakewalk for Tyrell. But we're hoping to keep guys like Tyrell around longer, right? We got him, I think, for a couple fights, but we would love to extend these contracts and keep these guys around, right? We love them being associated, attached with the Lights Out Extreme Fighting banner and being able to get on platforms like this and promote and talk about how great this fight gonna be. This to me is a showcase to. I mean, watch what's going to happen over the next, few weeks. We have, some very big names in MMA space that we're talking to, and again, our motto is not to go out and lay these big contracts down and try to compete with anybody. That's not the position we want to be in. But we do know that we're the most distributed regional promotion in the world with the amount of eyeballs that we get for what we are right now. And that for a lot of fighters is enough to say, you know what? I know if I come over and fight for Lights Out Extreme Fighting, I'm going to get seen. And if the UFC or somewhere else I want to go to get that big payday, I know there's a place to do it. And that's the kind of prestige we're building up right now with the brand, with the company.
Yeah, and I feel like you hear that a lot with, I guess, people who want to come to some leagues that are helmed by people who do have that kind of athletic background, like, albeit in a different sport, but a very physical one all the same. Like, do you, I guess, get that sense from certain fighters who are maybe, I mean, obviously, Lights Out Extreme Fighting is a strong brand in and of itself, but do you think there's that connectivity with some of these fighters who are looking to come in the sense of like, oh, I feel like Shawne would get it being that he's a high level athlete, has that, experience and stuff like that, and maybe understands their situation a bit more, if that makes sense.
Big time. I talked to him a lot leading up to the fight, and a lot of the fighters we have, I know or have known for a while, but some of them you meet for the first time. Some of the amateur fighters we got coming on, or some of the guys that starting out making their pro debuts. Like these, some of the guys I haven't met in person before, but for the most part, I've been at gyms, all over California, Southern and Northern California, and Arizona and Vegas, Miami and Fort Lauderdale, Tennessee. I've actually trained at a lot of these gyms. So, people, they'll tell you that if I'm not over there sparring or on open day mat, I'm over there hitting the heavy bag and getting some mitt work in or something. They've seen me in the gym. So I know exactly what they put their bodies through. I know exactly what, the mindset and them getting closer to a fight. And no doubt about it, it definitely helps the fact that, and that's just the kind of funny part. Some of these fighters, they'll come up to me and tell me that I was, one of their favorite players or their favorite player growing up. So to see them at the weigh-ins, also knowing that I played sports at the highest level you can possibly get to, right? So I get a lot of their way of thinking, and also too, I'm on the backside of things on the business side where I got to make things work. We got to make decisions to make sure that we're always, moving step forward, that we can keep having these fights and run a successful business as well. So I think there's two levels of like mutual respect there.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's a cool dynamic, absolutely. And just, yeah, no, love to see that. It seems like it's really doing a lot for the growth of the company and stuff like that. So, yeah, just an awesome scenario. But I guess I kind of thought to tie this in together a little bit, just in the sense of, part of your athletic journey was with the Buffalo Bills at one point and just with Gable Steveson also being in the fold for a little bit there. I'm just curious because there's some talks of him looking to maybe get into MMA. Like I know he was a big part of John Jones' training camp for his Stipe Miocic fight. Like, what do you think Gable Stevenson's, I guess, ceiling in MMA could be if he came over to the sport?
Well, for one, no one will ever question his wrestling ability, right? That's I mean, when it comes to that, he has the highest level you can get to. It's really going to come down on what he wants to do, right? Because first of all, he's going to walk in there with a skill set, at least in one particular area, that higher than most. That's going to walk in there, and it's really, does he want to turn this into a career? Right? It's a brutal sport. So is football and some of these other very, very high impact collision sports. But again, for him having the name that he has, his recognition, his awards, and his career, if he gets in there and start to have some success, he's going to be one of these guys that you can fast track, right? I don't think that he's going to warrant a fight in the UFC starting out. I think he needs to fight somewhere else. I would love to have him and figure out a way to have him some part of Lights Out Extreme Fighting. Outside of me being a fan of him in general, I just think that you need that platform to start with, to get your feet wet a little bit, have some matches to build up, because it's a different ball game you get in there. And if it's something he want to continue his career with doing, then yeah, the UFC I'm sure will pay him big money if he goes in there and put on a show. But it really has to be a want to, man. It's not whether he can. I think we all understand and know that he can. It's whether you want to do something in this sport or not, and your mindset and what you walk in there with.
Yeah, no, I hear you for sure, man. And just, yeah, I mean, kind of curious to, I guess, even get some insights into this from your perspective, because I've seen you address it a bit on social media, but thought to give you the floor in this context. Because the last time we were talking about, I kind of touched on that Rampage Jackson and Rashad Evans boxing bout that was planned for New Mexico a bit over a week ago at this point. And you had a post where you were talking about some bad apples in the business and they don't believe in doing things the right way and whatnot. Like, I guess what ultimately transpired there in terms of that boxing bout with Rampage Jackson and Rashad Evans not transpiring on April 12th.
Well, they didn't get compensated, which their contract was agreed to. Now, for me, I was just a platform provider with Lights Out Sports TV, but obviously, going back 15 years plus with Rampage and Rashad and knowing those guys a long time, just the ultimate pros, both of them, just how they handled it and how they went about it. And these guys they was not compensated, period. And they weren't the only ones. And fights started to fall out. Which again, I've been around this thing long enough. We got a 4.5, 5 hour event every 4 weeks or so. I'm in this business, so I know when people aren't doing it right, and you can kind of start sniffing around like, yeah, that's not going to work out just based on the people who are involved. So it's unfortunate because I think the idea of that influencer crossover series was good. I thought it was a great idea, especially having two big names like Paige and Rashad at the top of that. But that undercard, people weren't talking about that undercard enough. I mean, Vargas Jr. was on there, Shane Mosley Jr., Tapia. Diego Sanchez. You had some names on that undercard that could have got a lot of attention. DJ Swearinger, who, played NFL. So you had some names there. So again, when you got the wrong people running things, it's going to fall apart. And so many people getting this, and I can't call out all the promotions that's trying to start something and never start or go away. And again, you have to understand and know this business. And you also got to love it because you're not going to come in and just try and be the biggest thing moving and not have some speed bumps. You're going to have some speed bumps, but I see a lot of people coming with a lot of over promising and under delivering and don't understand this business. That's really the key.
I mean, just based on the wording you're using, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't get your thoughts on that global fight league situation where the GFL ultimately canceled the two cards that they were looking to do in May.
Yeah, and look, I don't know, and I know Darren, who's the founder of that, and I've talked to him personally. We even talked about if the fight did happen, it being on Lights Out Sports TV. So we'll obviously take in the content with those big names. I mean, they signed a lot of guys out the gate, and it's very hard to jump out the gate that way and not have everything on the back end situated. Again, man, that's why I tell people all the time, and I don't want to sound, like I'm patting UFC on the back too much, or as the young kids call it now, glazing. Um, but you can't jump in this business, man, and buy and just buy your way through it. You can't. If you go out and I was at those affliction fights. Remember those affliction fights back in it? I was at the fights. I think the one or two fights before they went under. I was at the fights and I was there and looking at it. It was a great setup. The fights were great. A lot of people came. It was packed, but there was no plan for the future. There was no rollout and how are we going to stay around for the next 5 years to 10 years. And so that when there's no plan of doing that, you're going to fail. And it's unfortunate we're at this point now where everybody's looking for attention and not try to build a brand because that's what really makes UFC. UFC, I say a big company, however many billions they're worth, but they built a brand to the point where even when I go back home, my friends and family, they ask me, they say, "Hey, you still doing that? You got that UFC thing? I saw your UFC thing on TV the other day." Right? And they're talking about Lights Out Extreme Fighting. They're saying, I got
Yeah.
my own friends and family that's watching, replays on Fubo or Bally's or Amazon Freeview, wherever we might have replays at, BN Sports. And Man, we saw your UFC thing the other day. We was watching it at the bar. Again, that's how strong that the UFC built their brand. And everybody wants to just jump right over, on how to build a brand. That's how you stay around, by building a brand, quality fights, production, having your fights when you're supposed to have them, right? Not canceling because there's no longevity in that, man. So everybody wants to jump over building the brand, and that's what makes UFC who they are.
In a sense, did you almost kind of adopt a similar blueprint in terms of your broader vision with Lights Out? 'Cause it seems like you've been very like longevity minded, like you said, like having a 5 year plan, maybe even 10 year plan, etc.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been called lights out personally since I was 16 years old. So that's something that I had to keep up in college, keep up in the pros, and even keep up now by having a successful business where lights out is still very in people's faces. They know what it is and things like that. And so we're lights out. We're going to grow organically. Like that's why I'm not really worried about competing with anybody. Like we're getting, to have Tyrell and Carl in this card, and then we got Jake Babian back and Brandon Art. We got guys who could be next up in this business, and we're going to keep continuing to getting guys next up. We're going to have more distribution. We got this shot tracker technology that we're going to implement with the chips and the gloves. They're going to measure the speed, power, punch, G-force, and all that stuff coming soon. PTF Lab, we have virtual advertising coming. Again, I'm not planning on going anywhere for a very long time, so there's no rush into try to be bigger than anybody. In fact, I'm so not in competition with anybody else. I want combat sports on Lights Out Sports TV. We're not worrying about technically competing with anybody else because we're going to be super successful on our own just because the brand recognition, the fighters, the production, the new tech that's coming. I believe this new tech that's coming both on the shot tracker technology and the PTF with the virtual advertising will change how people look at combat sports from now on. It will simply just change how people taking the data and the information and how they watch, whether they're gambling on the gloves and in fight game. I mean, just we want to change, parts and put our dent in this business that way. Not trying to compete with anybody because we don't care. In fact, we want to add more combat sports and things like that on Lights Out Sports TV.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what is available through there definitely, speaks to that. And just, yeah, some great fights on this event. The Brandon Arndt and Salvatore Bruno fight,
Yes.
obviously standing out. And then I saw Jake Babian and Marcus
Yep.
Walston throwing down. And then, Drake Flores, Khalil Pearson. Just, yeah, a deep event for sure, as you were kind of articulating earlier and whatnot.
Yeah, man. And again, it's getting to the point where the quality of fighters and the level of fighters is coming our way. It's getting harder and harder to fill these fight cards up, right? Because again, if we wanted to, we could put on 18 to 20 fights in a night, right? Start at 4 o'clock and go to 11, and we could just load it up. But we're trying to, for one, keep the audience attention by not having a too long of an event, and then also to make sure our fights are very quality wise, they're impactful. That we're not just having fights to have fights. We want fights to mean something, and that is where we're trending now. So we got this fight in Long Beach, May 10th. We got June 14th in San Diego at Casino Palma, and I believe we'll be in San Antonio September 5th. And we're locking down right now and making sure that's good. So we're going to be super successful in what we're doing. That is a guarantee. That's 100%. We'll do it the right way. We're not trying to outbuy or outspend anybody to get to the top or come out and be co-leaders of the MMA space. We're doing what we need to do in order to have organic and real growth. Not this social media growth that everybody's looking for by signing a bunch of big name fighters and don't doing things not doing things the right way.
Yeah, like, it seems like your approach is more, I guess, like long-term minded and also more of like a grassroots kind of thing as well and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that look, if you want to stay around for a long period of time, you build it from the grassroots up. Where now everybody in Southern California they're looking for us to have these events, right? We have people coming up from San Diego and Oceanside, Orange County, LA. Some up north is driving down. So we got a few fighters that's coming from North Cal. So because we have these events on repetition on time, we have the events when we say we're going to have them. That people are looking forward to it now, and now we're just growing our brand organically to the point where we're getting more distribution. I get people all the time that's sitting around at a bar or lounge or something like that, sending me videos or posting videos in the stories and tagging us. That's what we want. We want people to be sitting around watching Lights Out Extreme Fighting, not having to go out there and spend a bunch of money in marketing or try to sign big name fighters in order for people to look at us. We're building a brand with quality fighters and quality production. And we're going to keep on that repetition by adding technology and being an incubator, man. We want to be an incubator for other companies, right? Like we want to be able to do something new in the market that's adoptable across the board. And so that's our goal, not to really compete with anybody else because we don't really care.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, you have a very strong stable of fighters, like even localized just to, the champions that are presently in the organization, like guys like Arnold Jimenez, Blake Troop,
Yeah.
Pablo Caballero. I mean, some amateur champions as well. So, I mean, just a great platform, especially on like the amateur level because of the brand strength of that. And I guess speaking to the point of grassroots, I mean, that's even more grassroots in a way. Like I feel like we have seen growth within amateur MMA over the last like 10 plus years, but still more to be done. And I feel like having, amateur divisions and titles to aspire to within that on a brand like you have, I think will definitely pay dividends to that, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And there's some promotions out there that do really well, like Spar Star do really well with their amateurs. Epic in San Diego do really well with their amateurs. And we love that. We'll take some of the best amateurs of some of the state level amateurs in the state. And we'll because by the way, they've already built up a following themselves and they haven't got on the main stage yet. People, the country don't know about them yet, but trust me, people in California know exactly who they are in the MMA world, right? Southern California, they know exactly who these guys are when they're state level amateurs. And those are the ones that we hope to build up from the grassroots. And then when they're ready to turn pro, they turn pro with us. And that's the whole goal of this thing. And that way you're never running out of opportunity with quality fighters. They don't forget who gave them that shot, who got behind them, who made sure that when they came to the fights that they were taking care of the managers and families and I meet everybody, so I'm pretty much hands on involved with everything goes on, and you have no idea how many of the fighters come up and their moms or their dads might be fan of mine. I'm sitting over at the weigh-ins talking to their parents. It's just one of those things where that's the environment that we want to create.
Yeah, and it's a great environment, and you were outlining some of your, anecdotal training experiences, different spots you've been to, and obviously you've been, passionate about the sport for quite a while now and a good lay of the land within that. Like, is a lot of the talent recruitment under the Lights Out umbrella, is a lot of it your anecdotal knowledge of the landscape? Do you have certain people close to you within the promotion that are really, I guess, finger on the pulse with the talent acquisition component and everything?
Yeah, no, I got a badass team, man. I would like to take as much credit as I can for a lot of stuff, but I really do got a great team with Jane and Carrie and Nancy and Megan Trapp, and a lot of them, a lot of them come from Bellator. A lot was at the Bellator staff, and also been around, this sport for 2 decades, and so we got a ton of experience. The fighters trust that they're gonna get taken care of when they come over to Lights Out Extreme Fighting because we got a great group of people. And then two, we want to again do things in this sport to make our own dent, not trying to compete with anybody else. Like I really and truthfully believe once we are able to go live with this shot tracker technology and people are able to see a G force of a punch, a velocity of a punch, the connection where they're getting hit at in the cage, whether backs against the cage or they throw more shots in the middle. And then the PTF lab where the virtual advertisement, and again, when we have that, when we're ready to go with that in 90 days, guess what? If there's another combat sports promotion or a soccer league or whoever it is, we're going to make the technology available. So we want to be an incubator, not in competition with anybody.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. Like what led to, this pursuit and stuff like that. Like it seems like you want to add like a new dimension to, I guess like the analytical component, like a lot of the metrics that one would associate with fighting. Like how did this all initially come about and can you kind of get into some of the specifics of it at this juncture, perhaps?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Davion, who over at Shot Tracker is a really good friend of mine, and we kind of threw some ideas back and forth. We already know the technology works in NBA and MLB and PGA and other sports, so we know it works. And then we tried it a few fights ago, but we collected all the data after the fight. We didn't have it live. So, me and the reason why my head's so big is I'm always thinking, I said, hey, what if we get this data live? I said, what can we get this live where people can watch it live? And that's what we're working on. We're about 90 days or less away from being able to make this data live where people can now watch all this stuff live. And then as far as the PTF lab, those guys and what they built and what we've done behind the scenes, we know that these live ads change during the fight, right? We know how expensive it is because we have so much distribution on Fubo and Bally's and Amazon's Freevee. We're going to announce, UFC Fight Pass here soon. We got so many eyeballs that it's expensive for a company, especially a startup company or a smaller company, to come in and sponsor a night. We wanted to make sure that that sponsorship, if they wanted to come in and purchase a fight or two fights instead of a whole fight for a night, is much cheaper and more inexpensive to a company that's just getting off the ground, right? Or water companies just get on the shelves at Costco or whatever grocery they're selling in. They might not have a big marketing budget or spending budget for sponsorship. So we just open the floodgates to increase our revenue. Again, once we get this data accurate and everything's correct, we're going to take it out to other promotions, whether it's combat sports or soccer or minor league baseball. This is going to be made available across the board, but it's going to start with Lights Out Extreme Fighting, and that's kind of the beauty of it.
Yeah, I feel like in a way PFL has tried to do their own touch on the, I guess, way people look at metrics in fighting and things of that persuasion, like some of the data they use during their fights, etc. I guess kind of within that context in a way. I'm curious to maybe get your thoughts on some of the, I guess, changes they've made for this season and stuff like that. Like I did see you were kind of, I guess, retweeting a PFL tweet about Dakota Ditcheva kind of feeling like gutted by the lack of direction at the time. It seems like they're looking to get her in there in July at this point, I guess. But I guess I'm more talking about like that single elimination style tournament structure they're going with now, as opposed to like the prior like points based methodology that they had. Like, do you have any thoughts on what they're doing as of late or some of the amendments that they've made?
Whatever they're doing, man, God bless them. Seriously, just God. I mean, I try not to get into too much of what other people are doing, and because I don't know, I'm not in those meetings where I'm hearing what's going on, and maybe they got a grand plan. But again, if you start having to switch too many things or market things different or change the way you're doing things, it probably means it's not going that well. I mean, just to be honest, you're not gonna really see us change up too much of what we're doing because we got a plan. We know it's working, and again, we're not trying to spend our way to the top, right? That's not our program. We want to make sure that people understand the brand and who we are, our production level, our fight level, and more importantly, man, when the fans come there, just the atmosphere. We want to keep those things growing as opposed to we don't want to be co-leaders of this business. We don't care about measuring ourselves against UFC. In fact, yeah, I joke around with the fighters all the time. I say, dude, if UFC call you, I'm gonna drop you off myself. Just let me know so I can pick you up. I'll drop you off. I mean, look, that's the ultimate goal. If that's the case, and then for us, so be it.
No, I get where you're coming from, and yeah, I understand the stance and everything like that. I guess another tweet that I noticed that I kind of wanted to get some more insights on, just because I saw you, I guess, touting the fact that Michael Chandler always comes to fight, and it seems like a lot of the narrative coming out of that fight, or at least one of the headlines I had seen that Chael Sonnen also did a video on talking about the idea of like, okay, is Patty that good? Did we maybe, I guess, overestimate Chandler? I guess in an overarching way, do you have any thoughts on that fight between Michael Chandler and Paddy Pimblett?
Yeah, you look. First of all, I think that Patty is very underestimated, and not just his ground game, but he showed he can strike as well. He's getting a lot better standing up than he ever has been in the past. Um, but also too, and I meant it, and I got a personal relationship with Michael Chandler, and I love the warrior that he is. He's just a warrior. I don't care what happens in that cage. You're always going to watch the fight. Something's going to happen if Michael Chandler fights. That you're going to look at that fight no matter what and say, like that was crazy, right? There's some going to be something in that fight. You're like, damn, that's insane. And it could be good, it could be bad, but something's going to happen crazy when Michael Chandler fights. So that's never never going to be a dull moment there. I think that for all of us, man, as athletes, and I'm not speaking to him directly. I'm speaking to all athletes who get later on in their career. You're not going to be father time. And, at some point in time, you're going to get a little slower. Those hits going to add up a little bit more. Same as a running back, right? After 7, 8 years in the NFL, some of their plays started to climb because they've taken so many hits. And it happens to all of us. So that's not a slight at Michael or any other athlete that's, kind of on their way down. Um, he's had a great career, no matter how you look at it. And I don't know what his next thing is going to be. I still think he got something left in the tank, but I think that, we're not looking at what Michael Chandler 5 or 6 years ago, right? That's not what we're going to see. We're going to see somebody that's going to scrap no matter when he gets in that cage. He's always going to put on a show. But the expectations, for Michael Chandler are not going to, get what I'm saying? It's not going to keep staying as high as they are. When he only have what 3 or 4 losses in a row now, something like that. I don't know how many. I know he beat Tony, but after Tony, it was what, 3 losses?
Yeah, three
So
losses. Yeah.
yeah. So again, that's something a decision the UFC got to make, man. But to me personally, Michael Chandler will always be a warrior, and he's always meant a great deal, a lot in the sport. And I used to spend a lot of time around him when he was with Bellator, man. I spent a lot of time around Michael, and just even see him have this opportunity he's having now has just been great to see.
I agree. I mean, truly some classic Bellator fights that he's had over the years. And I get what you mean. It's one of those just realities of, one getting older and just the nature of physical sport and everything. But I guess talking about another event that, transpired under that TKO umbrella, I saw you were at WrestleMania with your
Yeah.
son there. What were some of the big takeaways from that event there for you?
Only thing I wish I went to both days. And it was cool because I got a chance to sit with Linda McMahon. And it was just, such a pleasure to just be around her. And what the cool thing is about her, and people always think that when you own a company or you're this, you're that, just how helpful she was to people around the suite. Like she was always still kind of get up working a little bit, right? I mean, this is Linda McMahon who everybody knows in this sport, and it was just great to just talk to her about the business and the sport, and but also too to see her in action. This she's still up and moving around and checking on people, and it was really cool, man. But the event itself, to sell 62 or 63 plus thousand back-to-back nights, I mean. That's just crazy. And the atmosphere, the energy in there, you can feel it. You can feel the energy and yeah, man, it was just great, man. That was probably not probably it was my 10th WrestleMania that I've ever been to. So, I've been to a lot of them. That ranks up there to some of the top.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the more, I guess, big moments, or at the very least a surprise, was when Joe Hendry came out and wrestled against Randy Orton, and obviously someone you got a little bit of beef with. I saw you clotheslined Joe Hendry in TNA a bit ago. What were your thoughts on that whole surprise match scenario with Hendry and Orton there?
I thought it was great. And one thing that Paul Triple H was talking about is everybody being a critic, right? And I don't know if you saw that interview with him just saying, "Hey, be a fan and not a critic." And it brought to my mind when a lot of people were saying about Joe Hendry, coming from TNA, building up that level of following. When I tell you, he came out and the whole damn crowd was going crazy singing his song, right? It was just. So again, I look at it as for one, you're into a Randy Orton. That's for one. One of the most known wrestlers of all time, and definitely still one of the biggest superstars in the business. You're going against him, and also you come out and your entry, Joe Hendry's entry, was bigger and better than Randy Orton's. And so again, you know, you're in that position, man. You gotta again take yourself out of being a critic a little bit. And if you're Joe Hendry, yeah, you might have didn't get the time in the ring that you wanted to, or the time on screen that you wanted to, or probably that you deserve. I mean, but that could still happen down the road and kind of build him up more. The following that he's created coming from TNA wrestling to have that whole crowd as loud as they were, as into it as they were, is a big accomplishment on its own. I mean, would I love to clothesline? Would I love to clothesline his ass again? Absolutely, of course. I'll do that in a second. But again, he's built up a level and a following that that most people will wish for. Do you have a crowd reaction that way coming from, TNA?
Yeah, for sure. We got to get that rematch going on, and I guess it could happen in TNA, or who knows, maybe at the next WrestleMania. Maybe your, next WrestleMania appearance will be in the ring this time as opposed to in the crowd kind of vibe.
I would knock it. I would say no. Definitely, it's definitely been talked about. So, we'll see.
Yeah, always big things for Shawne Merriman, it seems like, and the next chapter in that story unfurling on May 10th. And definitely excited for Lights Out XF 24, man, and appreciate you making some time to talk today again. But I figured I'd give you the floor in case you had a final parting thought you might want to add as we're kind of wrapping up, Sean. I appreciate you coming on Bowks Talking Bouts today and giving great insights.
No, this is awesome, man. I appreciate you for having me. And again, May 10th is we're looking for that fight to kind of catapult us in a lot of ways. Again, we got some signings coming up. Um, to have Tyrell and Carl fighting on this card, this headline of this thing is a heavyweight matchup you can only ask for. And some of the guys who are really getting behind, Jake Babian and Brandon Arn, I know he's fighting Bruno. But we got some up and coming talent that we see that's going to be around this business for a long time and be superstars of the sport. We're glad that they're coming through Lights Out Extreme Fighting.
Yeah, it's going to be a great one at Thunder Studios, and yeah, a great event for those in the Long Beach, California area. But if they're not in the immediate area, they can peep what's going on via the Lights Out Sports TV app on May 10th. And yeah, again, to reiterate, thanks so much for the time today, man. All the best with the event. And seems like there's a few more events subsequent to that coming up. So yeah, have to arrange some future chats around when those are going down. But until then, you have a good rest of your day. And yeah, thanks for the time, Sean.
You got it, man. Thanks for having me.